So we just wanted to come present in where you're at. Put your feet on the ground, on the floor. Just if you like, you're very welcome. Close your eyes if you feel the need to. So welcome. First of all, we'd like to do an acknowledgement to country. I'd like to pay my respects to the original first inhabitants of what we call Australia, and I'd like to acknowledge those, the traditions and customs of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from around our continent, and acknowledging also those on Zoom who are coming in from overseas and interstate, to acknowledging where your place is, where you are. We are situated as what we know as the Wakka Wakka people and lands here in the South Burnett. I wish to acknowledge the elders past and present, and all the elders that are present. In particular, we wish to pay respect to Glenys and to her mother, Beryl, who's present here today, who is actually born and raised, as was Glenys, in this beautiful land. I think it's important that we really acknowledge that their customs and their traditions are like that of our own ancestors who come from all around the world. And without acknowledging them, how can we acknowledge our own? And I'd like to also, at this point, acknowledge the local pagan and the goddess women who are here today, and those on the Zoom link. So we're nationally actually coming in from other states and globally. So I'd like to welcome Glenys to continue that. Thank you.
Yes, and now I introduce Jan. Okay, Jan. Jan Roberts. I've known Jan since about 1979, when I joined the founding collective of the Wakka Wakka Women's Health Collective, which is still, the Wakka Women's Health Centre is still thriving today as we speak. As I perceived it, Jan was one of the main driving energies. She knew how to get things done. And she was passionate about this cause, women's health, and many other things. I was just a tag along, as I perceive it, very appreciative to be amongst women who were moving and shaking for change. As I had just arrived back from Berkeley, California, halfway through a master's program there in theology and philosophy, and radicalized, that knew little about getting such things done. And I was honoured, and I am honoured, to have been amongst them. Jan was amongst the first to purchase my first book, PaGaian Cosmology, when it was published in 2005, and was part of probably the first group anywhere in the world to put it into practice, other than in my own circles, which had been happening for over a decade at that point. I used to send Jan's group, her Wakka Wakka group, CDs with the music they could use for the ceremonies. Jan was one of the main supporters of my production of the PaGaian Cosmology Meditation CDs in 2015, and has often purchased PaGaian Cosmology over the years, as well as other books that Girl Guide Books produces. Jan is a sister crone, feminist, and environmental activist since the 1970s. She currently writes a regular column for the Wakka Daily Advertiser and is still a mover and shaker. I am deeply honoured and grateful for her presence here today.
She's also got arthritic fingers. Yep, it's fine. Thank you, Glenys. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Wakka Wakka people. Just thinking how I come from Wakka Wakka and I come to Wakka Wakka. These lands were never sold or ceded and always will be Aboriginal land. Pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge any Aboriginal people present today, either with us or on Zoom. So, hello everyone. We come together today in person and by Zoom to celebrate the birthing of Glenys's book, A Poiesis of the Creative Cosmos, celebrating her within PaGaian Sacred Ceremony. Now that is some title. As Glenys was saying, I've known Glenys since the wild days of the second wave of feminism in the 1970s. Seems a long time ago at one level, and yet such a short time. Our collective energy at that time was calling out all that had been kept in the shadows: the injustice, inequality, denigration, punishment, killing, wounding, and silencing of women for millennia. Both Glenys and I had lived through the revolution of the 1960s, when the stirrings of women deviated from the stirrings of men. For too long we had been told, just wait a bit longer and our issues would be dealt with after they'd dealt with more important issues, which usually meant men's issues. Yes, there had been a revolution of sexual freedoms with the advent of the contraceptive pill, the birth of the alternate lifestyle community, drug experimentation and glorious music. So if not then, when would be the time right for women to break out and set their own agenda? We were indeed the second sex, but at least we had some control now over our own fertility. I think it's important to place the journeys that Glenys and I have been on almost for 50 years in that context. We were and still are determined to make a difference. We met in Wakka in the second half of the 1970s, as Glenys said earlier, and together with an amazing group of women, birthed the Wakka Women's Health Centre, a feminist centre for women in an arch-conservative community. We lived this new spirit of revolution and radical change, believing in our collective power. There have been times, indeed decades, when we did not have direct contact, but those early days created a strong bond of sisterhood which never goes away. In the intervening decades, Glenys had studied overseas, collaborating with and learning from people I regard as giants in the field of women's spirituality and cosmology. Starhawk, Charlene Spetnak, Mary Daly, Ariane Rich, Robin Morgan, Jean Houston, Thomas Gary and Brian Swim to name some. The next time I had direct contact with Glenys was in Springwood in the Blue Mountains, just outside of Sydney, in the early 2000s. A dear friend of mine had moved there and had made contact with this woman who had undertaken her PhD at the University of Western Sydney, which led to the publication of her first book in 2005, PaGaian Cosmology, Reinventing Earth-Based Goddess Religion. Lo and behold, it was Glenys. My friend Annabelle was part of Glenys's early Moon Circle group, and close friend Sheila was a participant in the ritual celebrations and the classes Glenys conducted over the years. I devoured this book and its poetry and rituals, aligning me with the pagan season wheel of the year from a southern hemisphere perspective, at last making sense of the seasons down under. What a joy it was, opening me to deep understanding of her, which I had known was there somewhere in my being and yet could not access. For so much of my life, I've been outer focused, fighting the good fight of feminism, and yet on many senses had been in the grip of a deep and abiding grief for the first 50 years of my life, which had remained unnamed. I did not fit within myself. I often felt out of shape, distorted and disconnected. A trip to Ireland in 1999, which is when I was 49, was transformational, where at last I found my home, my place, my ancestors, and had an experience of rebirth during a visit to the Passage Tomb at Newgrange. Here I came face to face with the triple spiral, maiden, mother, crone, the goddess, the female metaphor for the great creative principle of the universe. Glenys's book came at the time when I was integrating all that I had experienced. It grounded me in ritual, the cycle of the seasons, the waxing and waning of the moon, and Gaia, my mother. For that I will be forever grateful. The words that resonate with me when I think of Glenys are many. Loving, wise, generous, open, devoted, a thinker, creative, determined and committed, and occasionally overactive. You are a woman who has always placed yourself in the midst of your process, immersing yourself in this journey of discovery, of bringing forth a poiesis of the creative cosmos. Your journey has brought forth this amazing creation of sacred ceremonies, the PaGaian ceremonies, integrating so much of what you have experienced, felt, discovered, and dreamed into being. A life's work, and your great heart has led you to share this jewel, this creation with us. Within the pages of this book is a world of connection, relationships, and restoration of her, so that the feminine wound can be healed. This is healing and magic on so many levels and is gifted to us. Today we are birthing this new book, Glenys, here in Kingaroy, or just out of it, where you were born and left to explore the universe, and to where you have now returned. And why now, this particular point in time, is the energy changing and women across the world gathering, dreaming, speaking, and actively healing the wounded feminine? Because it is time. The tipping point has been reached, and the cosmos has aligned with the deep yearning of women. Call on her to hold us and bring cosmic balance and healing to our sad, disintegrating world. I've read all the reviews of Glenys's new book, A Poiesis of the Creative Cosmos, celebrating her within PaGaian Sacred Ceremony. You are held in such high esteem by all who review your work, and rightly so, for you have made an amazing contribution to restoring our deeper sense of being and our connection to all that is the cosmic journey. The words are so easy to say, but when I sat with that last statement, I felt the enormity of your exploration and the gift that it is to all of us. Glenys, a country-born Australian, I'm so very grateful you have stayed at home here in the Southern Hemisphere and provided all of us with an orientation we seldom experience, that of the journey of the Earth around the Sun from a Southern Hemispheric perspective. I will finish with your own words. You might be going to say them somewhere else, but that's okay. We can hear this often as we like. Restoring Goddess for me has meant restoring a sense of she to the cosmos, restoring female sacrality to the small particular self to begin with, and to other, and to all that is, restoring her as language, as sacred language, image and word, for the creative dynamic that unfolds the universe. Why not, you ask? She has been absent for so long, and what might happen then? What difference might it make to the world we live in? All I can say, Glenys, from one crone to another, it has made an enormous difference to the cosmos, our world, all who claim your creation, and to me personally. This book is a must for anyone who wishes to deepen their connection with poetic ritual and with the cosmos, with the PaGaian wheel of the year, and with her, which you say has been my work and passion, the recovery, speaking and celebrating of her. Thank you, and I wait with bated breath for what is to come.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much. I'll give you a few readings.
Yeah.
Okay. The first reading, there's a bit of ceremony involved in this, so I'll walk you into this alternate hour. Page 19 to 20, the first two paragraphs there in the introduction. My ancestors built great circles of stones that represented their perception of real time and space and enabled them to tell time. The stone circles were cosmic calendars. They went to great lengths and detail to get it right. It was obviously very important to them to have the stones of a particular kind in the right positions according to the position of the sun at different times of the year, and then to celebrate ceremony within it. I have for decades had a much smaller circle of stones assembled. I have regarded this small circle of stones as a medicine wheel. It is a portable collection that I can spread out in my living space or let sit in a small circle on an altar with a candle or candles in the middle. Each stone or object, as some are, represents a particular seasonal moment or transition and is placed in the corresponding direction. The small circle of 8 stones represents the flow of the solstices and equinoxes and the cross-quarter moments in between. That is, it represents the wheel of the year, as it is commonly known in pagan traditions. This wheel of stones, which captures the wheel of the year in essence, locates me in the deep present, wherein the past and the future are contained, both always gestating in the dark through the gateways. And all this has been continually enacted and expressed in the ceremonies of the Wheel of the Year, as the open yet formal group has done them, mostly in the place of Blue Mountains, Australia. Over the years of practice of ritually celebrating these 8 seasonal moments, Earth's whole annual journey around Sun, I have been held in this creative story. This story of creativity, as it may be written, it is a sacred story. Her pattern of creativity can be identified at all levels of reality, manifesting in seasonal cycles, moon cycles, body cycles. And to be aligned with it aligns a person's core with the creative Mother Universe. I have identified the placing of oneself within this wheel through ceremonial practice of the whole year of creativity as the placing of oneself in her womb, Gaia's womb, a place of creativity. All that is necessary for creativity is present in this place. All may come forth from here, and so it does, and so it has, and so it will. I have summarized and imaged a PaGaian cosmology with the pattern and motifs of this particular altar mandala. Though it will always vary somewhat according to place, hemisphere and region, and personal expression. I have often entered into this altar mandala for presentations and introductions in the following way. So to orient you first, I have water in the east, fire in the north, earth in the west, and air in the south, which seems appropriate to my place on the planet, southern hemisphere, east coast Australia. In the northern hemisphere, fire would be in the south, and traditionally air in the east, water in the west, and earth in the north. But the elements may be arranged as suitable for any particular place on the planet. It is a 3-layered arrangement, and at the edges of this particular, at the edges are the 4 elements in the 4 directions: water, fire, earth, and air. These are things I can identify as held in common with all being on this planet. You can feel the water within you, this primordial ocean recycled many times. You may feel the water in you, this primordial ocean recycled many times. Feel its moistness in you, taste it. You may feel the ancient water in you. You may feel the fire in you, this ancient heat passed on. Feel its warmth in you. You may feel this ancient fire in you. And you may feel the earth in you, this geological formation. Feel its weight in you, the weight of this earth in you. You may feel the ancient earth in you. And you may feel the air in you, its expansion, this ancient river that all have breathed. Feel it expand in you. You may feel this ancient air in you. And within that boundary is a circle of 8 stones that represent the seasonal transitions, the seasonal points that I and many others have celebrated in recognition of the regional phases of our planet's relationship with our source of life and energy, the sun. It thus represents our everyday sacred journey. Sewing deep autumn. The passing of the old, conceiving of the new. Winter solstice, Yule, the birth of the new, the birth of all origins. Imbolc, early spring, the nurturance of and dedication to the unique self. Spring equinox, ear star, the joy and power of being. Beltane, high spring, the fertility, desire, and dance of life. Summer solstice, Litha, the fullness and wholeness of being. Lammas, late summer, the harvest of life, the sacred consuming. Autumn equinox, Mabon, the grief and power of loss. And back to Samhain, heat transformation, and the circle begins again. Within that boundary, within that, the center of the arrangement is formed by 3 candles and associated objects, representing the triple spiral. 3 faces of a metaphor for the creative dynamic that I perceive continually unfolds in all. She is the old one, this creative dynamic. She is the old one who creates the space to be. The deep sentience within all, placed in the darkest quarter of the year. She is the new young one, who is the urge to be. The new, continually emerging, differentiated being, placed in the growing light. And she is the mother, who is this dynamic place of being, the relational web of this present moment. You may remember, we may remember, and you may remember something of what it has taken to unfold this particular moment and place for you. The work and creativity of the ancestors, those of the ages, and those of more recent time. The people of this land, particularly those of this local region, the Wakka Wakka people. The flora and the fauna of all times and places. The land herself. We may be thankful to all present in the depth of this moment. I'll give you another little reading from the preface. I have always understood PaGaian cosmology as poetry. It is not a discourse or a theory or a study of something as a theology is, or even as a theology may be. It is a speaking with our place, this habitat, which is understood to be alive and responsive and deeply complex, How else may we speak about our dynamic place of being, who is always much more than we can imagine? The ceremonial celebration of the complete cycle of seasonal ceremonies wherever one is on the planet, on our planet, and in all the diverse possibilities, may be experienced and recognized as a poiesis. That is, the intention is to make a world, to participate in an action that transforms and continues the world. The sacred ceremonies, when engaged in fully, are a method of action. They may serve as a catalyst for changing of mind, for personal and cultural change. PaGaian cosmology is primarily an action of sacred practice, an art form of ritual or ceremony, which is consistently practiced over the full year, the full orbit of Earth around Sun, and which may recreate a sense of sacred space-time on this everyday journey, which all on this planet make, whether conscious or not. The practice is a recreation of what I name as Gaia's womb, a place for the whole sacred site in which we live, and the sensation or embodiment of which is created with the practice of ceremony of Earth-Sun transitions, the seasonal moments, however they manifest in your place. It is the regular conversation throughout the whole annual cycle, the sacred gestalt that creates the womb, the space of integral relationship with source of being, whom one may understand as the great she, birthing all, other and self in every moment. The sacred site thus created is a space that nurtures the sense of the continuum in which we are immersed. Many Indigenous cultures still have this sacred relational sense of the world that is nurtured by ceremonies. And many of a variety of cultures in these times of great change seek such a relational sense, and who may identify as being in recovery from Western civilization. I have been engaged for decades now in returning to my Indigenous religious heritage of Western Europe, recreating and reinventing a ceremonial practice that celebrates the sacred journey around Sun. Right. I might skip straight away there to Samhain, because it is the season of Samhain, which is why the altar is decorated with the Samhain colours. So I'm reading from the section about Samhain, the chapter 4. Samhain is an opportunity for immersion in a deeper reality which the usual cultural trance denies. It may celebrate immersion in what is usually background, the real world beyond and within space and time, which is actually the major portion of the cosmos we live in. Samhain is about understanding that the dark is a fertile place. In its decay and rot, it seethes with infinite, unseen, complex golden threads, connected to the wealth of creativity of all that has gone before, like any compost. So it is in the current dark times culturally, and so it may be. We may be some of the golden thread. While our ancestors may have wondered whether we would make it through the coming winter, we may wonder in our times whether we will make it through the global spasms and planetary changes, and in what form. Life will persist. Such hope is represented by the seed in the fruit, as in an apple cut across the diameter. There is a thread of life that has eternally endured. There is the seed within us, the dark shining one, already present, simply awaiting its time of awakening. It may not be in the form we had in mind. To perform the magic, we accept all the old shapes of our lives, and ultimately of our culture, as compost for the new. We accept the unknowing. We put it all in the pot, consume it all, feed our imaginations good food, so that the new may emerge. We may make resolutions, resolutions. We transform the old into the new in our own body minds. We are the transformers. Okay, so really it's time for questions from the floor.
I wanted to ask if the people on Zoom might have the opportunity to ask something direct with you.
They will. I was going to let those present first, and then we'll give a bit of time to people on Zoom who may like to speak. Yeah. So, well, how are we going to do this? This one. So, if someone has something that they'd like to have a comment on or say, just let Taffy know, and he'll take the speaker to you. Yes, Alona. Microphone to Alona.
Could you try it? Just a little bit too close to.
Yeah, just hold.
I know it's a very basic question, but can you tell me at what age you knew there was so much more depth to the universe than what we actually perceive in how we're brought up from birth?
Well, there. Thank you. Yes, I do recall the first conscious experience was sitting on the veranda of the house. So it was something. Noisy. So anyway, it was that experience with the sun passing over this piece of land long before I was here and long before ever. So it was that sense of deep time with this. It was an experience I had that stays with me. And the other one, the same place, out the front of the house, looking at the night sky. And that for me was an experience of infinity. That's infinity. So those two experiences, I think, were the first consciousness of the bigger universe, and then the other life-changing moment was when I was pregnant for the first time, and alone by myself, sitting in a church, and it crossed my mind that if the deity was female, it would all be different. I just knew that it would be different. The way things had to be done.